All right, let's talk about a huge shift that's happening right now in how we all work with data. We are literally watching the end of an era, the era of charts, graphs, and all those dashboards we've spent the last 2 decades building. And we're moving towards something, well, something way more natural, a simple conversation.
Okay, so let's just dive right in with a story that is probably going to feel painfully familiar if you've ever worked on a data project. This one quote, it just perfectly captures this quiet crisis that's happening in offices everywhere. You know the drill. A massive amount of effort, time, and money goes into building these perfect tools, only for them to fail at the one moment that actually matters, answering the very next question.
And that one dashboard, the one that was used for all of 47 seconds, this was the price tag, $200,000, for less than a minute of use before it was pretty much abandoned. Now imagine that and multiply it across an entire organization. The scale of the waste is just staggering.
And all of this incredible waste leads us to a place that I like to call the dashboard graveyard. It's this digital resting place for all these expensive, time-consuming projects that, yeah, they were built with the best intentions, but they just ended up unused. They're like these monuments to questions that nobody's asking anymore. I mean, just look at the fatal math behind these projects. We're talking half a year of development, hundreds of thousands of dollars, all for a tool that's often out of date the moment it launches. Research shows that 38% of them just can't keep up with what users actually need. And get this, nearly 1 in 5 of these projects are described as never-ending, just constantly chasing after questions they were never ever designed to answer in the first place.
But here's the thing. This isn't just about fancy, expensive analytics tools. The problem goes way deeper. It's a cultural thing, and it's baked into the software we use every single day, where the look of progress often hides a really deep resistance to any real, meaningful change. Just picture this scene, okay? Jennifer from finance, she stands up in front of a packed room. She proudly announces that she has moved the company from a light blue spreadsheet cell to a dynamic teal. And the crowd goes wild. This is what gets celebrated as disruptive thinking, all while the data in that pretty teal cell is still wrong. And the real problems, they just go completely unsolved.
And this just perfectly illustrates what we call the innovation ladder in these kinds of cultures. You start off with safe, cosmetic changes. Maybe you get a little wild with conditional formatting. Ooh, the cells turn red. But the really useful stuff, macros, pivot tables, the things that actually automate work and save time, oh no, those are seen as the forbidden arts. And they're often flagged as a security risk simply because they represent genuine, uncontrolled change.
And this stagnation, it's not just inefficient, it's actually dangerous. You wind up with critical knowledge that's trapped in the head of one person who's about to retire. You get hit with a collaboration tax where nobody has any idea if final_v3_usethisone.xlsx is the right one. And eventually you just slam into a wall where you're buying faster computers just to open a spreadsheet. Think about that, a hardware solution for a software problem.
So for years, the solution we were always sold was, oh, you just need a better visualization, a cleaner spreadsheet. But what if the problem was never the tool? What if it was the entire interface itself? Well, a fundamental change has finally arrived.
I want you to meet the Natural Language User Interface, or NLUI. The whole idea is incredibly simple. You just talk to your data in plain English. Now, this concept isn't new, but for decades, computers just weren't smart enough to get our nuance, our context, until now.
A perfect storm of 3 major breakthroughs made this all possible. First, AI models finally got good enough to actually understand complex business logic. Second, a sort of universal translator for AI came along, letting it plug into any data source anywhere. And third, these conversational interfaces started showing up everywhere, right on our desktops, in the apps we already use.
And let's be really clear, this is not just another tech trend. This shift is being driven by cold, hard economics. The efficiency gains, the cost savings, they are so massive that ignoring this change is just not an option for any business that wants to stay competitive.
So let's make this real. What does this new way of working actually look like compared to that painful process we all know and hate? Here you go. On the left, that endless cycle of clicks and filters and exports, which, let's be honest, usually ends with you having to start all over again. And on the right, a simple, fluid conversation. You ask a question, then you ask a follow-up. The interface adapts to you, not the other way around. What used to take you hours now takes seconds.
And from a business perspective, it's just undeniable. A traditional dashboard costs a fortune, takes half a year to build, and it's practically obsolete on day one. A conversational access point, it costs a fraction of that. You can set it up in a couple of weeks, and it can answer a virtually infinite number of questions. It's not even a fair fight.
But this is so much more than just a new feature. This is a fundamental shift in how we think about data. And it comes with some incredibly powerful and honestly really surprising benefits, especially in an area where most people would expect it to be a weakness.
And that area is security. I know, it sounds totally counterintuitive. Letting anyone ask questions sounds like a security nightmare, right? But it's actually the exact opposite. The old way meant untracked spreadsheets and screenshots flying all over the place with zero audit trail. The new way? Every single query is logged. Security is enforced right at the data level, and you have a perfect real-time record of who asked what and when they asked it.
And this isn't just a theory. Look at these results from one organization that made the switch. Their business intelligence maintenance costs, they plummeted by 70%. And at the exact same time, the number of questions people were actually asking of their data skyrocketed by 400%. People were finally getting the answers they needed when they needed them.
So, is this really the end for dashboards? Well, not completely, but their role is about to get a whole lot smaller. For about 80% of what we do, ad hoc analysis, executive summaries, conversation is just flat out better. Dashboards will retreat to this small 20% niche for things like 24/7 operations monitoring or specific regulatory reports where the view absolutely has to be static and consistent. So, where does this all lead? Well, the transition to a linguistic, conversational future for data is already happening. And believe me, it is happening much, much faster than you might think. By the end of next year, this is projected to be a $10 billion market. And by 2027, conversation is going to be the default way we get to our data. This also means a massive shift for data teams. Their job isn't going to be to build rigid dashboards anymore. They're going to become context architects. Their job is to curate and prepare the data so that everyone in the entire organization can have meaningful conversations with it.
And this really brings us to the most important takeaway of all. For decades, we have been solving the wrong problem. We spent all this time and energy trying to build the perfect chart, the perfect visualization. But the real revolution isn't about seeing data better. It's about asking it better questions.
And that really brings us to the final thought for today. We are right on the verge of being able to ask our data literally anything we can think of, just using our own words. The only limit is going to be our own curiosity. So I'll leave you with this. What questions would you ask?